Well, folks, you're going to enjoy this. We're going to be talking about a really exciting, innovative project dealing with in Harlan County, Portal 31, the mine. And so I'm going to let the folks here introduce themselves and what do you do, and then we'll talk about the project.
I'm Debbie Napier, and I teach at Ross Point Elementary and Middle School, and I've worked with a group of social studies to build up some self-esteem and teaching some technology use and help them understand the role Harlan had in the place of the bigger picture of American history.
Okay.
I'm Michael Bradovich. I'm a resident in Lynch. I volunteer at the Kentucky Coal Mine Museum in Portal 31.
And I'm Kim Surgett. I am the social studies person for KVEC.
Yeah, and so it's great. We stole you away from, I guess you were doing some work in another county?
Mm-hmm. Letcher County.
Okay, good. So tell us about this idea of the project and where it came from and basically what's it all about.
Well, the idea came from Kentucky. We have very strong social studies standards that push inquiry. We want kids to be able to research and relate to the material that they're studying, and nothing's more fun than studying about home. And so we did a lot of research in the area and had a guest speaker, Mr. Obradovich, and did a field trip up to Portal 31 and the Coal Mining Museum, and we learned that Harlan County led the world in coal production, that we had the largest coal temple in the world, that people from all over Europe and the United States visited Kentucky, Harlan, to see how we manage that kind of production. And the kids investigated that a lot of that had to do with the setup of the coal communities, that towns were built by coal companies. The coal company that we focused on was Lynch. It was built by U.S. Steel, a subsidiary of that, the U.S. Coal and Coke Company. Henry Ford and U.S. Steel had actually helped construct the railroad into there because they wanted our good coal. And the kids were just amazed that we played that role in history, and we observed a lot of census data and look at how population growth was affected by that economy, and compared that population to Fayette County, and we're really surprised to learn that, you know, we were kind of neck and neck with them in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and they ended up creating a project they had a lot of pride in. Through this research, they developed a virtual field trip of Lynch, Kentucky.
And now you're using some technology as part of this project, don't you? So describe that technology.
Well, I think that initially when we sat down, the biggest thing that Debbie and I talked about when we started this project was we wanted to make sure that right off the bat that there was going to be a recording of history. And of course we wanted to make sure that we use technology because we want this to be a model for other teachers, especially when you engage in inquiry and deep historical investigation, that we want to make sure that there's a product that can be kept. Because the whole idea for us as historians is that not only do we learn the history, we want to record it, and we want to leave it, you know, in such a shape that others can use it afterwards. So for this, especially to become completely updated, we knew right off the bat we wanted to do virtual reality. And I think the other thing about this project that I think was so powerful is that we didn't just go in and just set a bunch of stuff on the table. Every day that we worked on this, it was with intention. Like we did the whole thing of inquiry. You didn't just set up one question. Every day had its own question that fed into the bigger question. And every day there were different primary sources that we looked at. And then most importantly, and the thing I think that was most powerful about this, is that not only did they have primary sources, they didn't just sit and read them. They read them and then they interpreted them, which is absolutely vital in history education. But they interpreted those documents, and then they put them into a format again to record it. Like one day when they looked at all of this information, then her kids, they wrote a newspaper article about it because there was all this who, what, where, why, that kind of thing. And then another day when we looked at the census data, she talked about that. They put it into bar graphs so that other people can look at that and interpret it. And I think that was so powerful. But I think the biggest thing, and I know Debbie's going to talk about this in a minute, is how it affected the students. And I think that's why when you really engage in genuine inquiry, and you really and you realize that history is not someone standing at the front of the room talking, that it's real investigation and consumption of the information, that I think that you see some really powerful things happen.
And what has your role been in this?
Well, as I say, I'm a lifelong resident of Lynch. So my mother came from Germany, my father came from Yugoslavia, and met in Lynch. And so my brother and I are the last two first generation children who were born to immigrant parents. And so I sort of lived through that period of time from the 40s, 50s, and the 60s, the good times. So I know a lot of the family, the history, and was honored to be able to share it with her students and present it here.
And I think that's one thing a lot of people don't understand, especially because of the coal mines, how many immigrants came here for the American dream and ended up in coal camps, and just very diverse communities, you know, with so many different nationalities.
Oh, it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. It sure was.
A great book, if any of the readers, if you've not read it, James Steele wrote a book called River of Earth. It's probably the best use of Appalachian dialect of any book. But he showed in that book how people left the farm to go into a town that was built by a company overnight. So we had overnight urbanization in the hills, and at the same time you had an influx of people from a lot of different colors, nationalities, and ethnic groups. So that was amazing what happened so quickly in communities.
I think one thing for me, because I got to be an observer for a lot of this, I got to watch Debbie and her student teacher and her kids do a lot of this. But again, I keep saying most powerful, so maybe I won't have to change what I said a minute ago, but the most powerful moment for me was watching her students and her interact with him that day that he came. I mean, there was such excitement, and I'd love for Debbie to talk about that. I mean, it was incredible just watching the kids and realizing, and I mean, because he's a primary source, and seeing that whole aspect, and it was so important to them to include his story. But talk about some of the things that you noticed that day.
Well, I do think that we tend to think of primary sources as written documents, but you know, a guest speaker, and our kids did a lot of analyzation of photographs, so we had artifacts and imagery and things that made it come alive and was learning. And yes, they thought it was really cool to have a visitor and change the dynamics of the class and be able to ask questions and get a really respectful answer. And the nationalities were like mind-boggling for them. And you talked about what a great opportunity that was for everybody to network together and come together as a family. It wasn't a diverse separating issue. You know, those differences were a commonality and created a unique and very successful community.
Yeah. Now, to make this virtual, did you have any help from anybody that we might know?
KVEC. KVEC was our hero on that stage.
And really, whenever you do anything technology, you have to look to the holler, because I think for me that's the pinnacle. You know, and that's the go-to, you know, for anything in terms of technology. It was amazing, and Mike will probably laugh a little bit the day that Tanner came. It was supposed to have been a spring day. Well, it turned winter that morning, and we were all freezing to death out there walking. But the coolest thing was to watch Tanner set up the 360 camera, because, I mean, listen, the Holler's serious about this. If you tell them you want to do augmented or virtual reality, the technology is going to be there. So, you know, he set the camera up, and Mike and I were doing some of the oral history recording, and the next thing we see, Tanner comes running across the road and jumps into the store that we were sitting in, because he had to record that 360 image. But that would be the Holler. You always go to them when you need anything like that. And I think that's the beauty of KVEC, is that they are there to support our teachers and our students, and they'll do it by any means necessary. And I think the Holler's a great example of that.
For people who are watching this broadcast, is there going to be a way they can experience Portal 31 in virtual reality?
What it focuses on is like she said, Lynch. So you'll be able to see the history, and this is just initial. Debbie has already said that this is going to grow, and that's the beauty of this. I mean, her students, they've bought in. They bought in a long time ago, and it's beautiful. But initially, you'll see Portal 31, the opening, but that's its own tour. That's the Portal 31 people, but we focused on the town of Lynch. So you'll be able to see the bathhouse. What else? Smokestack.
The firehouse, the actual portal itself, the tipple. We want to add the hospital. That was our last little thing laying on the table that we didn't get together because of our time constraints. But you see what made the town work.
Well, hey, this is an exciting project. I want to thank y'all for being a part of our program.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, great. So, see you.